national champions in not only women's college basketball, but men's. As South Carolina went undefeated to win the women's national championship, and then UConn, of course, going back to back, winning by an average margin of 23 points per game, dominating the men's tournament, including the national championship game last night, to become the first team since the '07 Florida Gators to go back to back.
Honestly, the men's national championship game last night was boring. I just watched it because it was the national championship, but at no point did I find myself going, "Oh, this is a great game! I'm so excited." It was just kind of meh, and that's clearly how the country felt about it, because last night's UConn Purdue national championship game averaged 14.8 million viewers, while the Iowa South Carolina national championship game on Sunday averaged 18.9 million viewers. That means the women's national championship game had more viewers than the men's for the first time ever. And I was at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse on Sunday for the women's national championship, and I'll tell you what, it was absolutely incredible to be there. It was like nothing I had ever been part of before, except for Game 4 when the Monsters won the Calder Cup back in 2016. But the crowd was into the game the entire time. It was just an amazing atmosphere. Iowa and South Carolina were going back and forth. Iowa jumped out to an 11-point lead early, and Dawn Staley just was able to calm her team down. She knew what buttons to push at the right time, and South Carolina showed all season why they were the best team. I'll tell you what the key was, in my opinion. It was the fact that South Carolina used their depth. They outscored Iowa 37-0 in terms of bench points. That is just incredible. Tessa Johnson came off the bench and had 19 points. And Raven Johnson did a fantastic job defensively against Caitlin Clark. Clark jumped out to a fast start, went off for 18 points in the first quarter. She didn't really do much the rest of the game. And her teammates, Kate Martin had a decent game, but Gabby Marshall didn't really do anything offensively for Iowa. Hannah Stolke, okay, she had a pretty good game, but overall, it was the fact that South Carolina played as a team, whereas Iowa was very Caitlin Clark dependent.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw that throughout the tournament. I think that you could have made an argument that the LSU team was a better team than Iowa. I think you could make the argument that the UConn team in the Final Four was a better overall team than Iowa. It was just that Caitlin Clark, did her greatness, and then of course she was able to get some help on those nights. But there was a reason why South Carolina was undefeated and why they were the best team in the country. It's almost the same reason as why UConn won by that average of over 20 points a game on the men's side. Both of those two teams, both of these national champions, they play very similar styles, which is not a ton of isolation basketball. It's a lot of ball movement. It's depth scoring. It's the ability to get scoring from inside, outside, and then both of these teams, I think have this quality about them, which is you can keep it close in the first half. You're basically surviving. And then we saw in the second half both South Carolina and UConn obviously pulling away almost immediately to be in that second half, and then it was, all she wrote from there. So,
not necessarily with the women's championship, because Iowa was able to come back and keep it close until the final 5 minutes when South Carolina just clamped down defensively and said, "You got to 75 points. That is where you are stopping." So
Somewhat close. I would say in the second half, I never felt like South Carolina was in any danger of losing the game.
I would vehemently disagree with that. Because like I said, I was there live, and there were times I'm like, oh, Iowa is getting closer, and they are putting themselves in a position to take the lead and maybe finish the job. But Dawn Staley, when you talk about the greats, not just in women's college coaches, but in men's college coaches, you have to include her name in there with the likes of Bill Self, Roy Williams, Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski, Pat Summit. You have to include Dawn Staley in there. I mean, 3 national championships in a span of 5 years, or no, 7 years, I think it is. South Carolina has created a dynasty going undefeated. And basically, South Carolina had a whole new team from last year. And they went and did this. I mean, it was incredible to be there, dude. This is why I wish the men's Final Four would come to Cleveland. Because I don't know if you were able to really hear it on TV, but the atmosphere, like I said earlier, was absolutely amazing. Was it enhanced because Caitlin Clark plays for Iowa? Sure, you can say that. But I guarantee you, when the men's uh, March Madness tournament comes to Cleveland next year for the first and second round games, I don't know if it'll be that same level of energy because it's not the national championship or Final Four, but there will be energy in the building at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse.
So I'll say this about the men's side. In a way, I think you're right. In a way, I think you're wrong because I think that Caitlin Clark and a lot of these women in the women's tournament, they are they were the stars of the entire women's and men's tournament. And I think because of the Caitlin Clark effect and because of the fact that she is the superstar. We talk about this a lot in the NBA terms of, there's all these great players, right? you know, Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic, Giannis, etc. But for 10, 15 years, we all knew it was LeBron's league. I said it, earlier today on Brandon's World. As great as Tim Duncan was in the early 2000s, and as great as Kobe Bryant was in the Shaquille O'Neal dynasty, the ratings during that time went down because there was no Michael Jordan. As great as those players were, Michael Jordan was that guy. To me, Caitlin Clark is that girl for women's college basketball. And I think on the men's side, because we don't have any of those stars, and this draft in particular is supposed to be the worst NBA draft in history. And that's no exaggeration. This draft is supposed to have even less stars than that Anthony Bennett draft over a decade ago. That I think that the first and second round of the men's tournament is the most exciting. It's more exciting than the Final Four. It's more exciting than the Sweet 16. It's even more exciting than the national championship. Why? Because I think that the men's tournament now is going to revolve around teams like Oakland and teams like NC State, who obviously did make a good run to the Final Four. But those upset teams that are your lower seeds, not that people didn't love them and root for them before, but now without any stars to root for, I mean, I think the last time people tuned into the NCAA tournament just to see one person was Zion 5 years ago at Duke.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Um, I could go back even further and say Anthony Davis at Kentucky, which
Yeah, but I don't remember him as big as Zion. So that was a long time ago. That was when I wasn't paying as much attention to the sports and landscape. I was still so young. You know, I was maybe 10, 11 years old at the time. I don't remember the hype for AD. I've heard that this week. I just don't remember it for some reason.
I feel like there was also hype when John Wall played for Kentucky. Maybe,
A little bit, yeah. And obviously, Kentucky's had such a good program, and now we know John Calipari is moving on to Arkansas. Um,
which
Go ahead,
you
real
know,
quick.
which going back to UConn with the Kentucky job open, people are thinking that Dan Hurley, the head coach of UConn currently, might leave and head to Lexington to be the head coach for the Kentucky Wildcats.
I would not do that. By the way, I think UConn should be the favorite to win next year as well.
They are.
Um, they have a couple kids leaving, but not everybody. Their bench depth is going to grow into their starters next year. I think they have a good chance to repeat. But we're going to move on, Josh. We're going to talk about the impact that Caitlin Clark will have in the WNBA. Now, I had just alluded to this about 2 minutes ago in the previous segment. I think that I would be concerned if I am women's college basketball moving forward because while I think the WNBA, and I know this is the topic that we're on, I think WNBA viewership will increase. The Indiana Fever, I believe, had already booked like a 20,000 seat arena for one of Caitlin Clark's debut games.
No, that's not quite right. I know what you're talking about. It's the Las Vegas Aces, the reigning
Okay,
defending WNBA champions. They are planning for the game against the Indiana Fever
I
to
got
move
you.
to move that game
Okay,
to the T-Mobile Arena where the Vegas Golden Knights play, and that's
okay.
also where major UFC events happen and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's where some WWE events happen as well. So I am aware of the arena. But again, it just goes to show you the impact that Caitlin Clark has had. I think she will have it on the WNBA, and I think it's really hard to find that main person star. And I think until women's college basketball gets in, now there's some people coming in, from my understanding, who could be, maybe not as good as Caitlin Clark or potentially better. We don't know. Um, but I think that Caitlin Clark had impacted women's sports in a way where they will get more light on them. I think, especially the WNBA. But if you don't have stars, we're seeing this in the men's game, right? I just talked about it. Ratings went up during that Zion Williamson tournament. And ever since, they've fallen off a cliff. They've gotten worse and worse every year. Women's college basketball, I think, has a better chance because of the fact there's not all these one and dones like the men's game. But I would like to see for Caitlin Clark. I know she's going to impact WNBA ratings. My question is, the NBA has always been resilient to partner with college basketball to grow the brand. To grow the brand. Excuse me. We saw the NBA partner with the WNBA this year at the All Star Game. It sounds like that's going to continue. But how much of that collaboration will they do? Will it be almost a partnership to grow both games at the same time? Because the NBA is arguably not as popular as it was a few years ago either.
So let me just say this. I know Caitlin Clark is about to leave women's college basketball. She's going to be the number one pick in the WNBA draft this coming Monday, April 15th, to the Indiana Fever. That's basically like you can write that in already. But women's college basketball, I don't think is going to fall off.
Well, it's going to fall off. I don't think it's going by a significant margin, but I will bet you right here, right now, unless there is another superstar waiting in the wings somewhere that I don't know about.
Go out to USC. Her name's Juju Watkins.
Okay,
You've
well,
got Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame. Paige Beckers at UConn. Women's college basketball is in good hands, my
yeah, but
man.
are they Caitlin Clark? That's what I'm trying to tell you. My analogy before the show. Caitlin Clark is the Michael Jordan of women's college basketball. Not in terms of she's the greatest college basketball ever. In terms of marketing and ability and getting people to a TV set. There's a difference between being a great player and getting people to a damn TV set.
Juju Watkins at USC, I think, is capable of getting to that point. Give her a couple years to really grow into it.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. A few years is fine, but next year I think it will take a hit. That is what I'm saying.
Sure, but at the same time, it's not just Caitlin Clark that's going to enhance the growth of the WNBA. You
Well,
also have
she's going to be the absolute forefront of it. You need one leader. You need one person. Everybody can follow along, but there's only that one girl. There's only that one guy.
I know. I get that. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying she's not going to be the only impactful person coming into the league. You also have Angel Reese at LSU, Camila Cardoso from South Carolina, Aaliyah Edwards at UConn. You've got, and plus we already have names in the WNBA as is. You have Sabrina Ionescu with the New York Liberty, Brianna Stewart with the New York Liberty. You have Kelsey Plum with the Las Vegas Aces, Asia Wilson with the Las Vegas Aces. So you all, Candace Parker, Shania Gumake, Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner. So this
By the way,
latest,
some of those girls have already been in this sport for years and were never even talked about until Caitlin Clark made people starting watching women's basketball as a whole, and that's the truth.
which is sad because women's basketball is fantastic. I've been watching it for years, and I love it. I'd love it if Cleveland got a WNBA team because right now, if I wanted to go see a WNBA game in person, I'd have to go to Indianapolis or Chicago, Minnesota, or New York.
I'll be very interested to see. All the time we talk about baseball and their marketing. I'm very interested to see the WNBA and their marketing and seeing if they step up their campaign. Because I'll be honest, even throughout the tournament, it was really only about Iowa and it was only about Caitlin Clark. It was never about any other team or tournament really, at least in my opinion. And it was still limited marketing. And again, will the WNBA and CAA tournament, the way CBS markets the men's, will it now be known as the men's NCAA and the women's NCAA, as just opposed to the NCAA tournament? Because that's a big difference.
You are correct there. And by the way, if you think today is the last day we're talking about the WNBA, you are wrong there because with the WNBA season starting up next month, we are for sure going to continue talking about it.